What are some deeply unsettling facts that you know? In 1933, a doctor named Karl Znaiser raided the bomb of a female patient with whom he'd become obsessed with and stole her body. He lived with the corpse for 7 years. As the body fell apart, he attached the corpse's bones together with wire and coat hangers and fitted the face with glass eyes. He was only caught when someone saw him dancing with the corpse in front of an open window. Hey, how about we ditch this musty-looking mausoleum and head back to my place? Okay, wow. What? These ones are going to get weird, aren't they? After the bombing of Hiroshima, black rain that contained radioactive material fell, and many didn't realize it until it was too late. Also, according to my Japanese professor, they didn't even have a word for the atomic bomb at the time. I unfortunately can't remember what she said they called it instead. They called it Pikadon, lightning thunder. For everyone who immediately thought of Pikachu, you aren't far off the mark. It's an onomatopoeia. The pika is the shining or flash of the lightning, and don is the boom. Pikachu is shining, plus the sound a mouse makes, kind of like calling an animal a flash squeak, which could be a Skaven name. In the Battle of Verdun, over 1 million artillery shells were fired onto a 19-mile-wide stretch of land in the first 12 hours. If you were lucky enough to survive until then, the sound alone was enough to drive you insane. Mummy brown. Mummy brown is a paint hue partially made up of ground-up Egyptian mummies. There are paintings made of dead people. Adding on to this, besides mummy brown or Egyptian brown, we used to eat mummies because of their supposed medical properties. That's why there are so few of them left. Nom nom nom, mummy mummy mummy, nom nom nom. Veteran criminals in the gulags would recruit naive prisoners for their escape attempts called cows, for the sole purpose of eating them when they ran out of food in the Siberian wilderness. Also known as walking supply. The astonishing fatality rates that can be found in so many battles in the First World War weren't accidents or unfortunate byproducts of the technology. They were factored into the battle plans. By the nature of attritional warfare, it was calculated how many men would be lost every week, and commanders drew up enough reinforcements to replace them. This was called normal wastage. I remember reading about the German plan at Verdun. The idea was to attack a target the French couldn't afford to abandon and force them to throw more and more men into the meat grinder to hopefully deplete the French army. It almost worked, too. Some regiments of the French army reported an over 100% casualty rate. I'm going to chuck this here since so many people are asking. It's possible for the casualty rate to be over 100% because when men die or become wounded, they get replaced to keep the unit at full strength. And if those men become casualties as well, it's possible for a unit of, say, 1,000 men to suffer 1,200 casualties over a particularly long and bloody battle like Verdun. An injury to the brain can turn you into a completely different person, as well as removing your ability to comprehend that it did. It doesn't even have to be a particularly bad one either. It just has to hit the right part of your brain. I was thinking about Michael Schumacher recently, and this came to mind. My dad had brain surgery for a tumour, and his personality changed immediately. He lost all his social rules and became the friendly, joking, gregarious salesman he'd always been at work, but without any of the depth of personality. He remembered everything and still did research for almost a year after that, but his social rules and any kind of deep personality were just gone. Doctor called it compensating for the loss by filling it with the salesman bull, and that's a very salesman thing to do. I've been in sales for 35 years and know the drill. It was hard on Mum to take care of him because, as she said, "This is not my husband. This is the salesman people see when he's far away from me." It eventually went to more normal brain cancer sickness, and he eventually passed after a year. It was so weird to watch and know that there was a whole part of him that the surgeon scooped out that day. That's actually a crazy way to put it, that the surgeon scooped out a part of his brain, because essentially that's what they did, but they scooped out the part that sort of took his personality with it, which is crazy to comprehend. Japan did some horrible experiments on people during World War II, Unit 731. Vivisection, shattering people's frostbitten limbs, biological warfare, etc. It's all quite horrific and don't recommend anyone without a stomach for horror to read about it. Also, after the war, the people who ran it were never tried as war criminals because the US decided to keep them and their research under wraps so that they could get a hand up on the Soviets. Fun fact, in China today, where these experiments happened, when a room is messy, instead of saying it looks like a pigsty, they'll say it looks like the Japanese invaded. Parents to child. Clean your room. It looks like the Japanese invaded in here. In extreme cases of scurvy, your scars break down and old wounds reopen. Collagen keeps scars together, and that collagen maintains itself throughout our lives. But without vitamin C, that process begins to halt, and the collagen breaks down. Eat your fruits and veggies, folks. The weirdest thing about scurvy is how it's showing up in well-off people. Some modern diets cut out all fruits and vegetables, leading to very low vitamin C. People then start getting weird symptoms, like bleeding gums. There was a guy at my mate's uni who subsisted on nothing but cheese and bacon rolls and cheap cordial for a semester. Went to the doc. Doc took ages to diagnose him, because naturally, who the frick gets scurvy in the middle of Brisbane, Australia, in the 21st century? Yes, I'm well aware of the urban legend. That also doesn't preclude it from happening in real life. If you're telling me that it's an urban myth that uni students have pooey nutrition, well, plus, I met the guy, Scurvy Bob. He freaking hated the name Bob, instead of his preferred diminutive, Rob. But, let's face it, Bob sounded more 18th century practical. He was fine with the scurvy bit. And the stupidest thing is, it takes literally any amount of vitamin C to halt. And the scariest thing is, scurvy doesn't just reopen scars. Broken bones that have healed well unknit too. Several years ago, I was recovering from surgery on my leg, one of many, and I had an external fixation on my leg. Basically a metal cage with 9 metal pins anchored in my bone and coming out and connected to the cage. I was adjusting the thing daily to basically regrow bone to heal a bad break. So those pin sites were moving. I have lots, 9, teardrop-shaped scars on my leg now. I was 100% non-weight bearing and couldn't do much cooking, so lots of frozen meals and food ordered in. And then at one point in my recovery, the level of pain in my leg exploded, and those pin sites and the other incision sites all started to reopen and weep. I was freaking out, calling my doc, doubling up on my pain meds, etc. And then I came across an article about scurvy, some kid that had gotten it freshman year of college after ingesting nothing but fried chicken and beer. I drank a very large glass of orange juice and felt better within like 30 minutes. It's such an easy fix that it should be the first treatment given for certain symptoms. Look, it's not scurvy because duh, but just in case it is scurvy, here, have some OJ. Drink that up while we finish your intake paperwork. Wow, that was actually really interesting. Well, I know exactly what I'm doing after this, downing a gallon of orange juice, and I'll be back to let you guys know how it went. Paradoxical undressing. It happens during the last stages of hypothermia. As your nerves are damaged, the person removes all of their clothing in freezing temperatures because they feel irrationally hot. People will also sometimes attempt to dig into the ground in the final stages, terminal burrowing. Tumours can grow teeth. Yep, they're called teratomas, and can even form hair, skin. Some cases report eyes, and one that I heard developed brain cells. Really creepy. Hold up, brain cells? Can that mean Harvard, here I come? Whoa, that was freaky. Now I'm imagining a tumor talking. This is a weird imagery. 21-year-old girl from South Carolina had a psychotic episode after using meth. Pulled both of her eyes out and crushed them in her hands because she thought she needed to in order to save the world. I believe people saw it happen. Maybe it worked. I'd hate for it to be nothing, so I'll just pretend it saved us all in 2012 or 2020. I don't know. Thanks, girl on meth. They used to not use anesthesia on babies when they would do surgery. In the 1800s, a lot of dentures were made using the teeth of dead soldiers. People used to scavenge battlefields pulling the teeth from the dead. After the Battle of Waterloo, it was advertised that the teeth were from the battle, like it was a novelty. And there were so many teeth available after Waterloo that scavenging for teeth was no longer profitable for those in Europe anyways. It was advertised because the dead were largely young men, and so presumably the teeth were still in decent condition. Like new. One previous owner. Terminal lucidity is the return of mental clarity or memory or consciousness shortly before death. This happens to around 10% of people with dementia. My grandma was in a care facility for the last year of her life, due to dementia. My uncle and mum have a bad relationship, and were arguing in her room over what needed to be done for her, and she yelled at them in the most conscious manner, "Chuck! Heidi! Stop fighting this instant!" and then passed right there. She didn't recognise any of us for weeks before this. Good to know why that happened. Those are the most mum last words ever. She wasn't even one of the people arguing, but got the ultimate last word. Impressive. The symptoms for a heart attack can be a lot milder than what is shown in movies or TV shows. I've seen people coming in with some discomfort and then passing due to a massive infraction when we did the angiogram. Quite a few years ago, my grandma took my grandpa to see his GP, and while at his appointment, the doctor noticed the symptoms of a heart attack on my grandma. The doctor had her sent to the ER. She had a massive heart attack, and she said she only felt mildly nauseous. She's most likely only alive because the GP used to be a cardiothoracic surgeon but gave it up to be a small-town doctor. My grandma walked around with a heart problem for months due to nobody recognizing it, and her being too proud to admit she wasn't feeling well. There really needs to be more awareness about the less obvious symptoms of heart attacks. Yeah, there really does. I'm someone that suffers with health anxiety, right? So I think I'm dying pretty much all of the time. So this does not help. Next time I'm feeling slightly nauseous, I'm going to be like, right, take me to the hospital, I'm gone, I'm dead. If a hamster manages to get its hands on your body if you're dead, it will use chunks of your skin, hair, and other stuff to make a nest, leaving a very bloody and messy scene behind. I missed the if there and thought they would somehow kill me, lol. The Junko Furuta case. Reading about it gave me nightmares. She was held captive for 44 days and basically tortured by her classmates. Some parents knew what was going on but did nothing about it. Since the criminals were juveniles at the time, they are free today. It terrifies me that people like this are born every day. I've never actually heard of that case. Do I want to know? Someone tell me, do I want to know? Do I want to research this? Tell me in the comments. When you blush, so does your stomach. Thank you, weird nerve stuff. You're very cool. Like how sometimes when I scratch at an itch, /spot, /whatever on the front of my waist, spots on the back of my shoulders will itch. Thoracic innervation is weird. There were Holocaust survivors that died shortly after being liberated because their body couldn't handle the increased calories when they were fed by the soldiers that freed them. This is called refeeding syndrome for anyone curious. One of my foster doggos was at high risk of this, and it was horrendous withholding food from a dog who was nearly starved to death. It took months of painstakingly measuring out her food and giving tiny portions every few hours, weekly vet visits, and by the time she was healthy enough for adoption, we'd just fallen so hard in love. Now she's our beautiful, healthy baby Maggie. The Matthews and the Hart bridges in Jacksonville are about to fail. The pilings in the river do not touch bottom. I'm a commercial driver and I refuse to drive on these bridges. Here you can read terminology and bridge ratings for every bridge in Florida. On the latest report, Matthews has a health index of 96, but a sufficiency rating of 44, while the Hart is 90 and 30. That's my hometown. I hate those bridges. I hate knowing that several people I love drive over those bridges on a constant basis. They're just one more thing on the list of reasons I don't like Jacksonville. Why the frick are those bridges still open for public? Still considered to be in fair condition by the Florida Department of Transportation. I live here and avoid them as well. It's a mess. Historically, our bridges have a grade of like a B compared to a C nationally. We have a lower number of structurally deficient bridges than other states of the country, said Kathleen Ravarak, Vice President of the Florida section of the American Society of Civil Engineers. This logic is absolutely terrifying. Why should we try to do better when others are doing worse? Seemingly, 100% healthy people with literally no reason to believe they would have any reason to can still spontaneously drop dead. Cherish every day. Had a friend who was in a Pokemon Go group chat with me who just up and died. We were talking about the event that was going on and he stopped responding. Everyone thought he was just busy and carried on the conversation without him. A few hours later, someone in the chat said he died, just walked into his kitchen and fell over dead. Everyone named a Ho-Ho after him since that was his Pokemon Go buddy. It was the first time a lot of us had experienced sudden death like that, so we were all really shaken for a while. He was only in his mid-30s. Okay, I can't lie, this is really not helping my health anxiety right now. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video, and have a wonderful day. The USA has lost 6 nuclear weapons that were never found. I smell the plot to the next Call of Duty campaign. Never mind, that just happened in Cold War. It's actually the plot to a Tom Clancy book. The real-world process of human fertilization, i.e. not in a lab, is so random that just about anything that happened differently during and after your parents having X would have resulted in someone else, or no one, being born instead of you. It's wild to think that so many things have to line up just right for pregnancy to occur. The human body is a trip. Rainbow Valley at Mount Everest is named so because of the colourful coats of dead people. The Blue Mustang statue at the Denver airport, named Blucifer by the locals, killed its creator when a piece fell and severed an artery in his leg. If weird ghost stuff is happening, make sure your carbon monoxide detector is working. Ah yes, the classic. There are dogs and cats on YouTube that made more money than you and your parents working your entire life. That's actually really depressing. With the permafrost and tundra thawing out bacteria and other microorganisms that we know nothing about are becoming active again. Pandemic 2, electric boogaloo. Cows don't convert grass directly into protein. They have enormous colonies of bacteria in their stomachs that have population explosions when they eat grass. Live, breed, die, and then the cows digest them into protein. Cows are bacteria ranchers. Cowception. Leafcutter ants are farmers too. They feed the leaves to a fungus and then eat that, not the leaves. Our lips and anus are made of the same skin type. Or material, I don't know how to say it without it being weird, and connected by one really long tube. Would make sense, since they both end at the same tunnel. We are essentially odd-shaped donuts, and when two people kiss, they form long, bendy tubes with buttholes at both ends. Okay, this is getting kind of strange now. We're going down a weird route with this. YouTubers who find animals in distress with the camera running usually put animals in distress to look like heroes. I was at a restaurant once and a bird flew in, smacking into a mirror and falling over. I got a napkin, picked it up, and brought it outside. It seemed shocked, but otherwise fine. I stayed with it a bit, hoping it would fly off, when this woman came over and asked what I was doing. I explained, and she said, "Oh, well, I'm a vet, so I can take it from here." So I said okay, and gave her the bird. She then proceeded to take selfies with it. Really didn't sit right with me. Bananas are berries, but strawberries are not. Okay, that was the smallest post with the most what the frick factor without relying on something gruesome. Stop it, a banana is not a berry. I refuse to believe this. Google? Tell me. My mother saw no end of disturbing things when she was a nurse, circa late 1950s to 1960s. She worked on psych wards where people got disturbing treatments, lobotomies, sleep therapy, etc. She also worked on a pediatrics ward in an area where there was pretty wild poverty and the kids were in rough shape. Awful era and living conditions way back when. What is sleep therapy? I can Google it, but not sure I want to just yet. From the shady website I found, it basically means sleeping for 18 to 22 hours per day. Not so great. I've been engaged in therapy for most of my life. I think that's called depression. I'm definitely depressed. From 1928 to 1972, my province would sterilise people who they found to be mentally handicapped. They figured this was the ideal way to stop the spread of mental disease. Which province? Alberta, Canada. Multiple genetic diseases. And this is extremely oversimplified so I don't give people nightmares. Glass bones/brittle bone disease. Sneezing can break a bone, or bumping a counter. Basically, the body can't grow strong bones at all. CPS has been called on many parents for this disease before diagnosis. Harlequin syndrome, very, very cracked and broken skin due to what doctors believe is the body being unable to shed old skin easily. Stone man syndrome, body overreacts to injury and instead of a bruise or sore muscle, will turn the injured area into bone. After a certain point, people with this have to decide what position to be frozen in for the rest of their existence. Tree man syndrome, condition where the HPV to grow uncontrollably to the point that the skin starts looking like tree bark. Butterfly skin. You know how delicate a butterfly's wings are and how easily they can lose their wing scales? That's the skin of someone who has this. It just comes off at the slightest touch, leaving many patients to look like walking mummies and needing to be under insane amounts of sun protection. Vampire disease. Basically, if someone goes out in sunlight without enough protection, their skin reacts horribly, worse than a sunburn by at least 20 times. Hey, I have brittle bones. I broke my femur, the strongest bone in the human body, by being pushed into a bin. It freaking sucks not being able to play sports with your friends, or be rough with them because you know if you do, you'll end up with an express trip to the hospital. So much stuff is cut off because I don't want to risk breaking something, and it honestly freaking sucks. Wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Is walking around scary? Not really. Mine's not as severe as that which has been publicised by various TV shows and the like, but I definitely still have to be careful. Wow, imagine that. You would literally just live every day in fear. It would be terrifying. In 2018, my sister was murdered. We know who did it. We keep track of where he lives. He's moved 4 times since my sister disappeared. The police also know he did it. There's not enough evidence to bring him in or charge him. her body is still never been found. If I go after him, he becomes the victim, and I won't be able to be a father to my children. He gets to be alive every day. He's a serial killer. We suspect my sister was not his first murder. From our interactions with state police and FBI, my impression is that our situation, while a nightmare, is perhaps not as rare as you would normally assume or hope. If the FBI is connected, I assume he's been on the radar for a few years. Most serial killers won't ever even be noticed, never mind captured. At least not the ones that are good at it. That's something to think about. Yeah, but if you're going to get murdered by a serial killer, at least that means there's better odds of it not being an amateur. That would be embarrassing. Ha! What an idiot. Imagine dying to a tier 3 serial killer. Low-tier trash couldn't even taunt the cops without getting caught. What a bum. You only know of the serial killers, murderers, and naughties that get caught, or want to be caught. There are lots and lots of them that are so good, they don't get caught. Dogs like squeaky toys because it sounds like prey that's frightened or injured. On the bright side, I've heard stories of dogs who immediately drop their squeaky toy after it squeaks and whimper and cuddle with it. Also, my dog prefers tug-of-war toys because he's a butthole who thinks everything is his. I've seen him drop everything just to take a toy from somebody else. Over 46% of ocean waste is fishing nets, and commercial fishing kills more animals in the ocean than any plastic does. I don't know why this isn't talked about more. Once symptoms start, rabies has a 100% mortality rate. Fortunately, the incubation period is several months, so get that shot ASAP. Got bit and got the shot. They really want you to get in the first 24 hours to be most effective. If you get bit, go to ER right away. It's seriously nothing you want to F with. As a doctor, I'd like to add that you can also get rabies from scratches, not only bites. Also, small rodents like rats, mice, hamsters, squirrels, and rabbits are not known to transmit rabies to humans. Beagles are the most popular breed of dogs used in testing because they're the most forgiving to humans. I used to have a beagle who was a former test animal. ID number tattooed in his ear, leg swollen from constant injections, had never been outdoors until 2 days before we adopted him. Sweetest dog in the world. As far as I know, he still lives with my ex's dad. Ugh, I'd love to shoot an animal tester in the face. Right in the face. Though unlikely, it's entirely possible that the universe has already collapsed, and the end of reality as we know it is propagating towards us at the speed of light. We'll never get any warning that it's coming, and it could hit us at any time, annihilating the entire planet in less than 1/10 of a second. I find this comforting. Agreed. Maybe it's better that we just start this whole thing over. See you all in 10 years when the Earth forms again. Cats know when they're going to die. They go and find a small secluded place and pass away. One of my cats did the exact opposite of this, and she followed me around everywhere I went in my house, to the point where I was just carrying her around with me. She later died once in her sleep, while just my dad and I were home. At least we thought she had. And then woke up and finally passed when my mum came home to say goodbye to her. She was very determined to die with her people there with her. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos coming daily.